preamble,
Sure.
and then we'll get started.
Got it.
Yeah, okay.
Got it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Data Ethics Conversations. And today we've got a really cool guest, Marc Canter. He's got a very long background. We'll get into it in a bit. Welcome to Data Ethics Conversations, Marc.
Coolicious.
Yeah. So anyway, let's just dive right into it. We were just talking a few minutes ago about Philippines not lagging behind too much, and the evils of the bots or the evils of the box. So
And specifically, it was the title of your podcast, the
yeah,
data ethics, right?
yeah,
And so, but if you think about trends, right? So, throughout the teens, the past 10 years, 12 years, um, there's been this go startup economy. And these folks are investing in anything fintech, property tech, insurance tech, lots of different forms of AI, something called the Internet of Things. There's all these different kind of things that have been getting invested in. And so what I was interested in is that so data ethics and AI is hitting Manila. So where does that put crypto? Where does crypto fit in the Philippines right now?
right now, let's let you know. So I think we had our first crypto exchange, PDAX, founded just about a year ago, or 2021 or 2020, about during the pandemic. And there's a fair amount of interest in terms of speculation, and I think that's where everyone starts. And just right before, I mean, just to date this podcast, we're sitting on just about a week after the most recent crypto crash,
Yeah.
and so I mean, it's cyclical, right? Any market. So the speculators are probably on the way out, but it's interesting that there's now an interest in something more sustainable like Web3, for example. But yeah, we were talking about definitions earlier. Like no one knows
Because
exactly what AI is, and Web3 is just another one of those things that people are trying to.
absolutely, and I'm here to tell you my opinion. Um, but what I was trying to get at was that the theme over the past decade has been this globalization, right? So those Silicon Valley and New York City are still the hotbeds of tech. Well, as we know, during the pandemic, Austin, Texas, and Miami
Popped
have
into
been
the radar,
coming
right?
up, right? Well, for those of us who traveled the world, we know that London is still happening, Berlin is still happening. We know that Shanghai and Singapore is still happening, Sydney. And so, and I've got friends from New Zealand and I've worked in Tokyo, Japan a lot. So, what I'm interested in is just how global this stuff is. In other words, as the shit's been hitting the fan, I mean, like everyone's freaking out about their crypto, their Bitcoin, their ETH, their Celsius, Terraform, which is coming out of South Korea. I'm assuming that there are just as many crypto heads in the Philippines who got burned by Terra, the Luna thing, and just as many crypto heads who are buying ETH, and they're buying on the dip right now this week. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, just about, because we have one of the major banks, Union Bank, breaking from the fold. Banks in the Philippines are usually very conservative, but they've just embraced crypto. I think they came out with
And they
this.
bought high.
Yeah, well,
They
that, that
bought
that's
Bitcoin at 55,000, right?
that's probably part of the problem, that they're trying to weather out the storm right now.
Well,
But
no,
but
actually, as I understand what's going on, is in fact, it's the whales and the institutions.
they got
Those are
hit.
the folks who are dumping, right? And that's driving things down.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
anyway, but what I was trying to say is that uh, the data ethics that you made the statement the Philippines is kind of behind. The data ethics is pervasive. It's going to always be here, right? And so whether those ethics are tied into how you build AI algorithms, whether you're targeting your Ponzi scheme for people who don't quite have, ethics about, business, they call it pulling the rug out from underneath you, the rug pull. And I love how the crypto heads create little buzzwords and sayings for things. This is so cultural.
Yeah.
And anyway, my particular, what I'm into is AI, in parentheses, NLP.
Okay.
Right. So we've got a very specialized area of AI, but dude, I can talk about anything. Where you want to start?
Yeah, let's start with that. I'm very curious. I mean, considering you've been a serial entrepreneur. Just for everyone's info. So Mark's one of I think Mark first got his. Can I say you got your chops with Macromedia? Yeah, you made your chops
Actually,
with
no, I
Macromedia?
was a video game programmer before that. And what I got famous for was there was this driving game called Spy Hunter. And it was a stand-up arcade game. And if I sang you the melody line,
So is that your masterpiece?
No, it's a guy named Henry Mancini. So that song was the first licensed music for video games ever. And I was a musician who was hired by Bally Midway to take the Peter Gunn theme song.
Oh, Peter Gunn,
and turn
yeah.
it into a Peter Gunn. It was a TV show in the late 50s. And Henry Mancini himself had to come into the shop to approve it.
So you took his melody, converted it into
and to the theme song for the video game. Yeah.
I mean, I was a baby during the 80s, but I remember programming in BASIC. So tell me about video games in that era. So how did you make them? And the theme.
Most video games were written in C. Okay. This is before C++. This is just C. Okay. And some guys just wrote in assembler. So I knew the guys who worked for Lucasfilm, and they were targeting a 64K memory footprint. And you had to write everything in assembler for that. We used a language called Forth, Forth. It's very weird, esoteric language. It did reverse Polish. So it was like Hebrew. You read from right to left instead of left to right. And so that was like, I was a programmer, and I was part of the team, and I'm the guy who's doing the melody lines or the sound effects. Okay. And we would burn EEPROMs. So I'd have a setup at my house. And by the way, in my 40-year career, I've only ever gone into the office for 2.5 years.
I thought you were going to say 2.5 days. 2.5 years, impressive.
For 2.5 years, while the venture capitalists were in my life, where we had an office and I had to go into the office. But all the other time, I've always worked from home.
Awesome.
So I had a big rig there, and we burned an EEPROM, and I had to take the EEPROM, put in a special carrier, and bring it into the shop, plop it into the big PC card, and it was pretty esoteric. And then after that, I said, you know what? I'm not going to do any more driving, shooting, flying, any of that kind of stuff, killing. And I got into creativity tools.
No more games. Or a different.
Well, there's a game of life,
Yeah.
the game of the industry, but no more video games, no. And that's since 1983. So I actually haven't really written any code since then, because we got these things called the Macintosh, and we were one of the first Macintosh developers. And immediately became apparent that the Macintosh is this thing called the resource manager. So any images or sounds or anything, you brought them in a separate fork in the file, and you just pointed to the file, and that was it. There was no need for all the coding and stuff. So I became the CEO guy, the idea guy,
the business dude.
Yeah, but also the front man. I was like I was a trained opera singer, so I knew how to stand out in a crowd, get my voice heard.
So after video games, you got into creativity, using Macs. Was this the time you got into macro media, or was it
No, the
macro
company was
macromind?
called Macromind.
Yeah.
And we started in Chicago, and we did a music program, the very first music program for the Macintosh. Then we did a video of, it wasn't really video, it was animation, but we called it Video Works. And then we figured out how to, you were talking about BASIC earlier. We had a little tiny BASIC, a very limited subset of BASIC that we put into VideoWorks so that you could create interactivity and buttons on the screen and have do a go to and jump. Okay. And that evolved. We got venture capital funding and we moved from Chicago to San Francisco. And everyone was going down to the valley. And we said, no, we're going to stay up in the city. We all had black leather jackets. We were like city boys, you know? So we were the first big software company to start in what's called Soma, south of Market area, right? So that was in 87, 88. And so from there, we said we hired a Apple executive to be the CEO, and we renamed the product Director. And that's when we started to go big time. And so Director eventually between 88 and 95 represented 85% of all multimedia produced in the world, okay? And when we say multimedia, so we had this general purpose editor, and you could do business presentations, you could do educational courseware, you could do a video game, you could do business simulations, product simulations. You could do scientific visualization. There's lots of different things that people did with Director. And that gave birth to the CD-ROM era. Now, Dom, I'm going to ask you a historical question. What happened after the CD-ROM era?
Was it CDs to DVDs? I don't know, just what I remember.
No, dude, it was a thing called the web.
Oh yeah, the internet.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, remember, on the shiny disk, could store 600 megabytes of data. Yeah. You know, photos and little miniature videos. And so that was a lot. And then we go into this 1200 baud modem.
Yeah.
You know, these websites were miniature. So a lot of the baby was thrown out with the bathwater. You know, a lot of the value that we had developed, the aesthetics, quality of media, was irrelevant for about 10 years. Between 95 and 2005, the world literally went backwards. It couldn't do full frame video.
This is because of the bandwidth, right? The bandwidth limitation. Yeah.
So
I remember. Yeah, I remember back in the day we had CD-ROM encyclopedias, and that was still the more, I don't know, the more trusted source of information.
Well, because it had it had photos and videos on it, right? And so the key year was around 2005. A couple of key things happened. One was that the bandwidth was there, and so you could do streaming video, and that meant you could have something called YouTube.
Yep.
Okay. The other thing that happened in 2005 was that my company, my former company, Macromind, had turned into Macromedia. Macromedia had bought a product called Flash.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, so Flash.
But because Director was designed for CD-ROMs, and they got caught with their pants down. So they had to buy Flash to get the equivalent technology. So by 2005, Adobe and Macromedia were in competition, and they merged together. So you got the merger. And by the way, when YouTube was first built, it used the Flash codec to do the streaming video. Later on, they changed it. But the point was that Flash was, and Macromind, Macromedia, was the leading multimedia company on the planet.
Was that
Okay.
was it a competitor to? I remember we used to also install QuickTime video back in the day. Was it
Right. Well, so
the same
the
thing?
same game that Apple's playing now is the same game they were playing then, which is the same game they invented in the 80s, which is that we're going to create something so cool and exclusive, you have to buy a Macintosh. And so that was called QuickTime. And they even fucked us back in 89. We had a little video editor and they didn't tell us about QuickTime. So went and built all this stuff ourselves. And then they said, ah, ha, 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 we have QuickTime, fuck you, you know. Anyway, and then the only reason why Microsoft left us alone was that the entire multimedia tools business was worth less than $1 billion.
Yeah, at that time, right?
And I had a Microsoft guy tell me, we're not even going to bother with you. You know, you're so small, you know. It was only until around 95, 96 that Microsoft came out with Silverlight. So Silverlight is what they used to compete with QuickTime, right? So anyway, so QuickTime was the OS stuff, and they had built this thing called Premiere, and then there was a thing called Final Cut. And the funny story about Final Cut was originally a Macromedia product, and Macromedia sold it to Apple.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
The whole thing is just so incestuous. All these people are the same people. So there's a guy named Kevin Lynch. Now, Kevin Lynch worked at General Magic, which is where a lot of the ex-Mac people went. Kevin Lynch then was associated with Dreamweaver. So he started working with Macromedia. When the merger happened, Kevin Lynch came out on top. So Kevin Lynch was like in charge of all the products for Adobe, right? And it was Kevin Lynch. So when they put the Flash player on the iPhone, I don't know if you remember the story. Steve Jobs took a stake and he drove it to the heart.
Yeah,
of Flash.
That was a big, big news item. Yeah. They're not going to support Flash. Yeah.
Well, there was a reason why. And we get to blame Kevin Lynch. Okay. The performance of the Flash player was so shitty that it pulled down the performance of the whole iPhone. It was taking on like 60, 70% of the processor time. No, Steve Jobs said, get out of here.
Resource management, was that it?
No, this is just processor time, just like bad programming. They just didn't know how to do it. Anyway, so Kevin Lynch was then in this fight when Jobs prevented the Flash player from being on the iPhone. It was Kevin Lynch's responsibility to fight with Jobs and Apple. Dude, this is how our industry goes. About 5 years later, they hire Kevin Lynch to become the head of the iWatch.
You took him back. Okay, awesome.
And then Kevin Lynch went to go run the Apple iCar. Okay, now we know that got canceled, and I believe right now Kevin Lynch is in charge of, I don't know, because you know what? I don't give a shit. I mean, some Apple watcher, I'm sure, can go track down which executive job Kevin Lynch has at Apple. By the fact that Kevin Lynch, who fucked up on Flash, becomes a big shot at Apple. Dude, there's no mercy here. There's no justice. You know,
this is the way the industry works, right?
This is almost as if a former dictator's son would get elected prime minister. It's like, what the fuck? You know, it's like, but whatever. We're not here to talk about politics.
Well, not that kind of politics. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so that's my journey, and you know, dude, I could talk forever about.
Yeah. So let's jump a little bit. So nowadays, so bandwidth got big, Macromedia, Flash, iPhones, mobile. So kind of the interfaces got wider, and then now we're in a world where everything's basically running on data, and everything's running on some device, and then and we have AI and we have crypto, and we were just talking about that. I mean, that's part of the reason why we booted up this podcast is it's just gotten so complex so quickly. I mean, in a relatively short span of time, and now we have people, we have kids who don't even remember the era before the internet. That must
Right.
seem weird. So yeah, so talk to me about what you're doing now. No, you're
Well,
on.
okay,
You have a
so
company.
yeah, so I'm gonna try to synopsize because I could talk forever. Um, you know what's called a chat bot? These are the guys who end up on the bottom right hand corner of your screen,
Yep.
and it's like you want to order pizza, you want to get some digital health advice, you want to make a reservation at a restaurant or a reservation on an airline, you know. And so these little things appear in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, and you can type into it. And the theory is you get an answer back. Now, more times than not, that answer is not a human, it's a bot. And so the term chatbot started around 2016 as a way to lower the cost of tech support. Now, here I am talking to somebody in the Philippines. This is taking jobs right away from
Call,
people,
call center capital of the world.
Call center, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't have to tell you, when you automate tech support, that saves the company money and it costs jobs in the Philippines. All right, so I have a partner for my current company, and he's an AI professor, and he teaches at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, British Columbia. Okay, and when he and I first got together, we realized that we needed to take a whole new approach to chatbots. And the technical term is NLP, natural language processing. So the first mainstream deployment of NLP was Siri. And let me just do a little more gossiping. You know, Steve Jobs bought Siri, brought it into Apple, and he rushed it to market to be part of the iPhone. And most people realize that Siri was at least 2 years too soon before being put in too soon, premature. And the reason why is that he was dying. And
Yeah,
this was
I
his
think I saw
last
an
big thing.
interview. I saw one of his last interviews, and they asked him,
Yeah.
"What are you working on next?" And he kind of leaked it a little bit. Oh, yeah, we're acquiring an AI company.
Yeah. Well, so he wanted to be first, you know, he was all about cutting edge, bleeding edge stuff. And so anyway, because I know the guy who did it, his name's Adam Chayer. And so Siri got rushed out too soon. Adam and his partner then quit Apple and started another company called Viv. Viv was then sold to Samsung. That's baked into what Samsung now has called Bixby. Okay. So if you get a fancy Samsung phone, it has its own NLP built in. Then over at Microsoft, they built an NLP for a video game called Halo. And that was called Cortana. Okay. So at one point, Microsoft was trying to sell Cortana separately. That didn't work out too well. What they did was they actually translated it for Mandarin, and it does very well in China. Okay. But anyway, the net of this all is that then Amazon came along and said, well, we got our own way to do it. That's called Alexa. And that's been a huge hit, right? But this is already 5 years ago that Alexa came along. So my partner and I, we decided we need a new angle. And at the time also, there were these new things called Instagram stories. So you hip to those?
Trying to, but yeah, it's all the rage.
Video,
Yeah,
photo,
yeah.
you know,
And
and the
and
Instagram.
TikTok also came out, and
Right. So, but
Facebook.
I'm gonna put this all into context. Okay. So Instagram stole the idea of stories from Snapchat. And then Facebook, who owns Instagram, they took those Instagram stories and they put those into Facebook. And so the combination of Snap, Instagram, and Facebook, over 2 billion stories are posted every day. right? Now I'm watching my daughters, and they're creating these Instagram stories, and they've designed it to be frictionless, very easy to do. Just swipe your hand, you can add something into this buffer. And the sequence of the photos and videos that you put into the buffer plays out over 24 hours. And at the end of the 24 hours, they just go away. And if you want to save it, because it's got some really good photos or really good videos, you just hit the button called highlight story, and it'll save whatever's in the buffer. Okay? And that's what we still have today. Now, what Instagram and TikTok have caused is a battle where they're laying things on top of the photos and videos. And then TikTok's got this whole thing with the duets and the other kind of fancy things. So TikTok and Instagram now go back and forth, copying each other, battling it out as they get billions and billions of users to use their product. Okay. And the business model is they just run advertising against those people. Okay. Now, for somebody like me, a small startup guy, I can't compete with that. So we don't consider ourselves a typical creativity tool that any creator could use, even though that's what it is. Okay. Right. What we found is a new business model. So first, let me tell you how AI fits in, then I'll tell you the business model, and then we can schmooze about NFTs. Okay. So
Yeah, go ahead.
So the first thing is that when you make a chatbot, that's kind of a right brain thinking kind of experience. That is task oriented, factual data, like get this done, do this. And the vendor, the person who's using the chatbot, they build a giant decision tree with all the answers. And so you type in a question, and it goes through it and finds the answers. If you don't have an answer, oh, well, tough luck. It didn't answer your question, right? And needless to say, the company that owns the chatbot, they control the data. And they can be as unscrupulous and do whatever evil thing you can imagine. And so one of the fields of AI, one of the arguments is that the AI is going to turn into Skynet, or what they call AGI. In fact, there recently, a couple of weeks ago, was a Google programmer who claimed that the Google chatbot had become prescient and had come to life. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So my partner and I would go, okay, we need to out this shit. This is complete bullshit. Okay. So we told the story of this little dog named Toto. And Toto runs over to the side and he pulls the green curtain back. And what you see is this old guy pulling levers, turning a wheel, and claiming that he's a wizard.
The Wizard of Oz,
right?
Running
right.
everything.
And so that's called fiction, right? That's called made up. Okay. And he's using smoke and mirrors, literally fire and smoke and mirrors to simulate that he's some wizard. That's the AI industry. Okay. So what we want to do is be left-brained. We want all the data of the chat experience to come from the creator. So this is how I tied together all the eras of my life. In the 80s, we were doing multimedia to express ourselves. And in the 90s, going into the aughts, there was a thing called blogging. And then as of 05, 07, video came online. And that went over to Vines, if you remember these short little videos.
Yeah, Vines had a moment.
Right, and then Snap, and then Instagram, and then TikTok. So what we see is a clear trajectory of the technology getting better and better. And what we're designing is what happens after TikTok. Okay, so imagine if you had a tool that you could tell a story just like an Instagram story, but there's a text field at the bottom. And the user who's viewing the story can type into the text field and ask a question of the story. Or maybe the story asks a question of you. You've got to answer it. Or maybe you're tapping and going over here and doing interactive narrative, or maybe there's a survey built in, or like it just the range of possibilities is endless. Okay. So this is what we call AI storytelling. And in a perfect world, AI storytelling is cross-platform. So if you could imagine it, I could send you a URL and you just tap on the URL and bring up the story. But I might be inside Fortnite or Roblox or Minecraft. And I tap on something and up comes the story. Or maybe you've got one of these 3D puppets, these little virtual characters, these animojis. And its brain is empty, by the way. There's nothing inside its brain. So our data, our stories go inside the brain of the being, the virtual being, so it can tell a story. Okay. So, but we don't call what we're doing bots, because bots are evil. So we call them beings. Okay. So we have this tool and it makes beings. And when we get enough funding, we'll have the sophisticated AI stuff into it. But I can't sell that to investors. No one's going to give me money on the promise that I'm going to do all this stuff. So I had this epiphany. And this was helped actually by, of all companies, Apple. Okay. And so 2 years ago, right at the beginning of the pandemic, Apple decides to fuck Facebook. And on top of any of that, what happened with the tracking and all that?
Surveillance and the data privacy, all that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So and this is all part of the marketing of the iPhone 13. Okay. So Apple decided that privacy was a big deal. And they were going to turn off this capability that Facebook used a lot of tracking a user as they move from app to app. So they could build a profile of the user and then run targeted ads against that user. Well, the moment that Apple turned that off, Facebook dropped 30% in value. Facebook is writing off $10 billion in losses because of that.
Wow.
And to the point where Facebook changed the name of their company to Meta. That's how badly Apple fucked Facebook. Okay. So, and then Google, who wants to not get left behind, they decided, well, we're going to turn off cookies. Right.
Yeah,
now, they don't do this until
development.
but they don't do this until next year. So the advertising business, as we speak right now, 21 and 22.
It's going to be screwed, at least digitally screwed.
But it turns out that, being advertisers in 2021, advertising was up 35%. And so no one knows what the future is. So they're all kind of doubling down on the present. Let me get our money while we can,
It's a cash grab.
Okay. So my company's called Instigate. So here's what we do. We enable this advertising. Oh, do you know the term DTC?
No.
You ever heard that term? Okay, that means direct to consumer. Now, over here in the States, there's like, for glasses, it's Warby Parker, okay? And also Zenni. For food kit, Blue Apron, Hello Fresh. For mattresses, Casper mattresses. For shaving, Dollar Shave Club. For makeup, Glossier. There's and really Rihanna's company and Kylie Jenner's company. These are all direct to consumer. No, it never goes into retail.
Doesn't go to distributors. It's direct marketing. That's how
direct marketing? They call it direct to consumer, DTC.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's been a shift going on in the world of advertising. Okay. Not only is this whole privacy thing, the data tracking and all that, but the shift is going on because, see, e-commerce is more mature now. E-commerce is 10 years or older. It's not like some new spring chicken, like automated driving of cars or things that are still unproven. We know you call up Amazon and you get something. I assume you've got equivalent e-commerce things in the Philippines.
Yeah, and Amazon ships here too. So
okay, so
pretty mature.
So what happens is that the vendor, the e-commerce person, develops a list of customers. They know exactly who their customers are. And so if you think about the way advertising worked in the past, all the money went to accosting the customer, trying to convince them, be my customer. I'm reaching my hand in your pocket. Advertising, advertising, advertising. It's all this kind of aggressive thing, try to convince people to acquire customers, right? But people are realizing, yo, dude, chill out. So the shift is, rather than to try to acquire customers, they're starting to spend more and more money on keeping the existing customers happy.
Loyalty and retention. Yeah.
Right. So retention is one word. The real word is engagement. So the people we're competing against, believe it or not, is not ad tech and traditional advertising. It's Constant Contact and MailChimp, because that's how it's done today. Email spam, right? You get your name on a mail list, and from then on, they're going to start accosting you, reminding you, you once bought something from us, and we're never going to let you forget it.
Buy more, buy more. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the problem we're solving. Like, there's got to be a better way for these advertisers to connect with their customers. So we've got this interactive story thing, right? So the first thing our interactive story does, it enables it. So it's kind of like a big mail server, and you create the story, and then you upload the CSV file, you have the list of customers, and we send you, and today it's just email and SMS, right? It could be a phone number or email, but you can imagine it being built into a Facebook ad, being built into the metaverse, being built into one of these puppets. It's a URL. It could be anywhere, okay? But the point is that when an ad viewer, a customer, taps on the URL, my finger right, okay, taps on the URL, up comes the story, okay? Now on Android and iOS, it takes up the whole screen. On a laptop, it'll just be like this window. It's floating, it's a mobile web window. But the point is, da 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 video and celebrity endorsements, baseline thumping EDM music, and it's media, it's narration, it's everything that an Instagram story can be. And then it's got a text field on the bottom so you can ask questions, and the advertisers can engage with these customers. So that's the first part, is that we think that our experience, the thing that we can let that advertiser send to their customers, boom, that's part one. Now, you watch this story, and then at the end of the story, a button comes up, and it says, create your own, okay? So this ad viewer, they were just watching this beautiful thing, and it's got music and video, and there's something in there that this ad viewer goes, wow, I'd like to check this out. So they hit create your own button, and this little editor that we have loads into the memory of the ad, opens it up, and shows all the elements of the ad right there in this little editor. So this creator now can go in there and grab just the baseline, just the celebrity endorsement, just this beautiful drone shot, or whatever, and they can copy that,
Compose their own.
and paste it into their own.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's like a remix. So the advertisers are creating their media specifically so that the ad viewers will want to copy it. And of course, they've got the logo right there on their forehead, as Nike aspirational pose, is Tesla driving around the corner, it's dancing chicken, or whatever it is, it's fun and it's cool. And so now, how do we make money? Well, we run what's called micropayments in the background. So our marketing is that we don't track people, we track media. And so as that media clip gets copied and pasted into your thing, well, then you share it with your friends. And then your friends gets it, and then they create something with it, and they share it with their friends. And every time it gets shared, we make 0.001 cent. If the sharing generates enough money, the creator who's doing the sharing, they get some of the money, right? It's a whole new kind of thing.
So it's a deconstruction of the ad process, pretty much.
Deconstruct and reconstruct and remix your own.
And democratizing the revenue. That's
so
pretty
cool. I'm going to tell you a crazy version. This is just to let you know how my mind thinks. So there's a woman named Taylor Swift, right? You know her?
Yeah, I heard of her, I think.
It's like country rock.
Yeah.
Okay? And one of the things about Taylor Swift, two things about Taylor Swift. One, she loves to write songs about her boyfriends and breaking up with her boyfriends. Okay, that's her theme. Okay. And two, she got screwed over by her record label. So she is out re-recording all her hit records again, a second time, under her own ownership. Right? So she's proactively out there re-recording these songs and relaunching and remarketing her music to let everybody know, don't buy the old stuff, buy the new version that I'm creating. So imagine Taylor Swift gets a hold of our product, okay? And so the Taylor Swift fans, because needless to say, Taylor Swift's got millions of fans, right? So she knows exactly who they are, okay? So she sends this, we call it a being, to her fans. And there's Taylor on the mountaintop, and Taylor on stage doing a gig, and Taylor backstage. And then there's Taylor with one of her boyfriends, breaking up with her boyfriend, slaps him across the face. Okay. Now I'm bringing up slapping because, of course, Will Smith and Chris Rock have made this famous recently. But let's stick with Taylor Swift. Now, this young teenage girl is watching this Taylor Swift being, okay? And she's like, oh my God, Taylor, I love Taylor. You know, Taylor, 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 Taylor. And then at the end, Taylor like smacks her boyfriend. And the girl goes, I need to do that to my boyfriend. I need to break up with my boyfriend. I'm sick and tired of my boyfriend acting bad to me. So she goes, she hits create your own. She becomes a creator. She goes into the Taylor Swift thing. She grabs the slap. She puts it over in her own being. And she says, dear boyfriend, get lost. I'm sick and tired of you, right?
Time to split. Time to go.
makes the breakup video, and she punctuates it with the Taylor Swift slap. Anything is possible, dude.
So any part of that ad now becomes kind of this reusable asset.
Or anything. I mean, you can just imagine, just like, anyway, I'm pretty excited about it. And we haven't really raised any big money yet, but we're getting there. And so now imagine NFTs. Okay? Now, for all the up and down of crypto, here's what we know for sure. An NFT is the first usage of the blockchain that couldn't be done without the blockchain.
Yeah.
Everything else before that, you could have made a digital currency or like all these things. So the whole blockchain thing's a little made up. You know, it's like a problem with it's like a solution with no problem. But NFTs are something that obviously have found the right resonance. Now, nowadays, it's mainly associated with art and with these like private clubs and stuff, which is cool. And that we've already seen peak NFT. Now it's come back down. Well, what remains? The NFT itself is pretty obvious, but there's a thing called a smart contract that goes along with the NFT. So here's my position. I am not a red pill popping crypto head. I don't necessarily believe in blockchain or crypto, but I can tell you what I do believe in: creators. I believe in my customers. And as a toolsmith guy, it is my job to give my customers what they want. What my customers want my storytelling tool to support NFTs. So there's two obvious use cases. One, I have an NFT. I went and bought it over here. I bought it over there. It doesn't matter how you bought it, but you have the NFT. Now, you want to market your NFT. You want to sell your NFT. Or really, at the end of the day, you want to tell a story about your NFT. So you import your NFT into our world. You tell a story about it. And now the NFT is embedded in the story. So then when I export and send it out with that URL, there's an NFT inside the story. Now we'll open source the file format and we'll go to OpenSea and MetaMask and all these crypto.com and Binance and all these people. We'll say, yo, support our format. It's a cool storytelling format that has NFTs embedded in it. And hopefully that'll work. The second use case is where a creator doesn't have an NFT. So from inside our world, they'll be able to create an NFT and they can decide, is the whole story the NFT or just one of the pieces of media? Okay, they can decide either or. And they do the same thing, they export it, But I can tell you this, I ain't going to be, or shall I say, my tool is not going to be the custodian of the NFT.
Of the NFT, yeah.
Right. No. Have you heard about the hackers? Have you heard about those evil people? No way am I attracting those evil people. Stay away from me. So when you mint an NFT, you have to say, I'm going to store it in this wallet. I'm going to put it over here in this IFPS storage system. I'm going to put it over here in this marketplace. I don't care, as long as it's not in my product, okay? So we're kind of like a Photoshop of NFTs, where you bring it in, we do something to it, and then we send it back out. And I think that's what advertisers will want. So my customers are not just the creators, my customers are the advertisers as well.
Yeah, you've brought them together,
Yeah.
And it democratizes the creative process too, nowadays.
Well, so think about all the ways a creator can make money. Okay. So first of all, these ads, these brands, they've got their own in-house department. They could go hire an agency, but they might want to just go hire one of our creators directly. Okay. Now this creator, he can get a gig working for a brand. He can create his own stuff. Okay. And he's going to have something else. So let me put it this way. It's 2022. I think I've met Kevin like once way back when. Kevin and I talk a lot more online than we do in real life. But once I get this company funded, I'm hitting the road and I'm totally heading to Manila. Okay. And I'm totally going to be in Sydney and Melbourne. I'm totally going to Singapore. I'm totally making the circuit, Auckland and etc. So when I show up in town, we're going to have a little meeting. We're going to be evangelizing,
We're going to talk about this stuff. Yeah, exactly.
We're going to talk about it, meet people, and these entrepreneurs are going to be totally into it. And we're going to say, and I'm going to say, look, I want you to sell some ads. Go to your local restaurant, moped dealership, bank, insurance company, whatever. And I want those ads, because you're talking to these people, I want them running inside your being that you're promoting. And we'll have what's called edge intelligence. And we'll be able to tell whether someone's looking at your stuff from the Philippines, whether someone's looking at your stuff from all of Southeast Asia, or whether it's global. And based upon who's looking at your content, we can have different ads being displayed. And the people who are my customers, those advertisers, they're going to want to be sponsors and they're going to be in there. So I'm going to have a whole ad network that makes it really easy for this creator, as long as they're creating something fun, something good, so they can make money as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what makes the kind of, I don't know if you would call this part of the Web3 kind of, paradigm. It's like everything's a micro economy.
Yeah.
and it's
So, so,
distributed.
so since you brought it up a couple of times, let me tell you my definition of Web3. And I'm glad that we started off talking about AI because the crypto heads, they don't include AI as part of their definition of Web3. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's just almost as if they're a bunch of snotty-nosed kids who got rich. They're talking down to us. No, I'm not prejudiced or anything. I'm just saying, wow. Okay. So trust me, Web3 is more than just blockchain and crypto. For one, it sure as hell is AI. Okay. It sure as hell is what we call the Internet of Things. Sensors and smart doors and smart homes and smart factories. Okay. That's what's inside of Tesla and all these electric cars, is all these sensors. Obviously, Web3 is the metaverse. Obviously, Web3 is VR and AR and XR and all that stuff. And finally, obviously, Web3 is the creator economy. Okay. Absolutely. And that's why we call what we're doing Web3 advertising. You see? But that's my definition of Web3. Everyone else is out there with their dogma. And maybe this recent downturn is making these people a little more humble, realize that they can't be defining a term and it's exclusionary.
Yeah.
You use a term like Web3, it has to be inclusionary, right? It's got to include everything to be Web3.
Yeah, and I think
Anyway,
even the AI heads, I mean, speaking from
yeah.
from communities, I think there's a challenge for the AI people to level up. I mean, everyone gets too cooped up with the machine learning part, and then
and,
it's
and they
something
and
that
they're like this, right? Everyone's
yeah,
got their domain expertise, but
yeah,
what makes good AI is really understanding how it's used, and what makes good creativity is when you put in context of something, and
yeah,
that's where the blockchain and all this crypto and the smart contracts attached to the NFTs, that's where they make sense.
yeah. It's. I mean, just to break it down, the learning is only one part. It's when you bring the learning to a process, creative process,
Yes,
economic
yes,
process,
yeah.
and that's also where I mean, just to bring it back to the title. Um, by the way, Mark, we're running to the hour. I know we
Does
only
Kevin
got.
have a question?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, how are you? It's pretty good. Could you give us a blueprint or a lay of the land about where you see this going? Now, I know that you've done a great history, but when we were talking about in 2013, if you can remember, I was giving a keynote to around 20,000 people in Manila, and you helped me create the Internet of Things, which is one of the most powerful moments in recognizing. And then now, what you were saying then was you can't turn it off, right? And I was communicating in such a way that our technology is going to become, owning us. And let's talk, if you could, a little bit more about, because I see where you're going with we track media, not people, which was brilliant.
Right.
Love that statement. I love that statement. I've been live tweeting this, by the way. So could you talk a little bit more about what is going on in terms of machine learning and more of the nefarious side and what people need to pay attention to in terms of ethics? Everybody personally too, so that
Sure,
would be
sure.
the best.
So at the top level, we're seeing this unfold at Google as we speak. Well, it's very interesting dynamics comparing Google and Facebook. So here's these people at Facebook. The rats are bailing the ship. Okay. Anybody who's got any reputation is getting the hell out of Facebook. And the only way they've been able to keep people, the smart ones, working at Facebook is that they promise them that they're going to open source all this key AI technology that's being developed. Because Facebook is, I think, number two, actually, either number two or number three, if you count Microsoft, for spending money on AI. Okay. So I'll give you one example. So Google developed something called TensorFlow. Okay. So TensorFlow is when you take the neural network and you layer it. Okay. And for the past 5 years, it's been the state of the art cutting edge stuff. Well, God bless Google and all their glory, they came up with something better than TensorFlow. I mean, you know what they did? They told 10 guys, let's just do something better than TensorFlow. So they did. And that's called JAX, J-A-X. It's
So
only available.
That's not the guy that's going to date his chatbot.
No, it's the other guy.
JAX is only available in-house. It is not a public thing. So Google recently announced that they're moving away from supporting TensorFlow. And guess who? They've open sourced it. And guess who's going to be the person to take care of TensorFlow? Facebook. Yeah. So they did that politically to keep a bunch of Facebook employees. And so Facebook appears to be a leader, more of a leader.
AI race, yeah.
Right, you got it. And then meanwhile, Google's like, got rid of that. We don't have to worry about that anymore. It's fascinating to see. Now, but meanwhile, both Facebook and Google hire these people, these AI ethicists, whose job it is to go look inside the bowels of the engine to look for bias and prejudice. And I don't have to tell you that they might have a lot of Chinese guys. They might have a lot of Indian guys, but all those guys are trying to act as white as possible. Okay. And this is a white
Story
male
of Silicon
dominated,
Valley.
you got it. And this is a white male dominated thing. And so they could literally go. And the examples we use is when they take photographs of black people and they can't even tell who that person is. It's like the algorithms are prejudiced towards white people, and cultural norms, like you're supposed to say this or that. And if you use bad grammar, oh my God, this person's not intelligent. Or like there's 100 ways that the biases come out in the algorithms.
You've seen that a lot in YouTube as well. For example, it's normal food channels that have this problem. Food channels, non-political, and they get banned and demonetized because they're showing food in other regions and other countries, right?
Yeah.
And it's like so aligned to, you can't show dead animals. You can't show cooking dead animals.
Or a cooking show is expected to be in a well-lit studio. If you shot a native person up in the hills chopping their food in a native environment, oh, that's not considered good quality. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. So here's the thing. So the AI folks can't go change society. They can put up some checks and balances to try to prevent it. And on a case-by-case basis, so facial recognition, for instance, is something that's gotten a huge pushback. And society said, no, we don't want facial recognition. So a lot of these companies, Clearview is one of them, is getting shut down, and they're being prevented from doing that. Another area is the deep fakes, okay, where you can make a politician say anything, right? That's a problem, okay? Especially since Facebook.
You have $500,000, Mark. You can make them say anything you want.
Yeah, and okay. Anyway, and then also when this stuff then, because of social media, translates into genocide, and we saw that in Myanmar, we see that in the Congo, we see that in Bangladesh and the Hindu states.
Doc, could you talk about registering social media and what that would include and get Mark?
Well, I mean, dude, severely problematic. Remember, my country, the president of the United States incited a riot where thousands of people invaded the Capitol building, and it looks like they're going to get away with it. So to understand the nuances of being a centrist means that he's still not going to legalize marijuana. He's afraid to prosecute Trump. And they're having those hearings right now on TV showing the evidence, and we'll see if he does anything. So I'm highly cynical. If I'm seeing this happen in politics, how the hell is that going to happen in technology? How the hell are we going to solve this problem? So the only way to hurt these people is to hit them in their wallet.
Economics.
So Facebook is shrinking. We're seeing that. Like I said, they took a $10 billion loss. In my country, the problem is something called Fox News, where they can just get on there and lie. I mean, just outright lie. Let me tell you a quick story. Do you know the name Stephen Colbert? He's a comic guy.
Yeah, comedian.
All right. So he created a puppet that was pretending like he was having his strings pulled to represent the Republican Party, and that Trump is the puppeteer, right? So he sent a crew to break into the Capitol to see what it's like if a puppet breaks into the Capitol. Well, this time, the Capitol Police caught them and arrested them. So Stephen Colbert set the whole thing up for the publicity, right? All right, so what do you think Fox News reports? Stephen Colbert is starting an insurrection to overtopple the U.S. government. I mean, like, these people are insane.
Isn't it the same?
These people are insane. Okay, all right, so how do you hurt Fox News? How do you create change? Well, you go boycott Fox Sports, the Wall Street Journal, Fox Animation,
kill the engagement, and kill the
and hit them where
eyeballs.
it hurts in their wallet. Yeah, hit them where it hurts.
For CNN. Look at CNN, right? Nobody watches them because nobody likes them.
Oh my God! And they put these jokers, these fools on TV.
Right? I mean, they're guilty of the worst type of hyperbole. Right? Yeah. I used to love CNN in the 90s, 80s, 90s, and and then all of a sudden
they brought this guy in here and he thinks he's running an entertainment channel because that's what Fox thinks of themselves. Well, we're going to do it too. It's ridiculous.
It definitely dumbed down the national conversation. I see that. I mean, the news didn't used to be like this. You used to read the news, right? Yeah. This is what happened. This is who's involved. Now it's
this is why. And by the way, this is why they pay attention to Johnny Depp and his girlfriend. Is that
trial?
Because that's more entertaining than real news.
Yeah, the real life news.
Pay attention to that. Anyway, so in this whole world, we got a whole new angle to advertising, to entertainment, to creativity. By learning our product, you're going to learn about AI, and you work your way up through the system. And so that's called Instigate. You can get a copy of the prototype right now at Instigate.ai and download it, take a look at it, play with it. There's a survey in there. There's all sorts of things. Come and ping me and give me some feedback.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm sure we could talk for another hour, Mark, but I just
call back some other time.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing, and definitely we'll have a follow through.
Call me after the floods, the monsoons,
after all the chaos. Yeah. Anyway, so that was.
And thank you, Kevin, for inviting me.
Yeah, that was Marc Canter, and hopefully we'll have him over again. And thanks a lot, Mark, for being part of Conversations.
All right, dudes. Catch you later.
Okay, I'll stop recording here.
Bye.